Change is a guarantee. There's no choice in the matter. However, one can choose to accept and therefore embrace the process, growing forward into a new era. The season of rapid technological advances comes at us in waves. Our environment is ever-changing, constantly expanding. But sometimes, to move forward, the DNA of old resurfaces and resurrects. We find a value in where we came from, leading us to where we'll end up. The parts of us we left behind become the tool that leads us forward. Because progress is not always embarking on a radically new plan. Often, there is a simplicity and wisdom in that path from which we came. Lessons learned, concepts proven. Change should be embraced. Systems will evolve. But remembering where we came from provides the foundation from which we can move forward. We paved the frontiers of old. Now, we pave the frontiers of tomorrow. Henry cut its teeth in 1860 when Benjamin Tyler Henry patented the first practical lever-action repeating rifle. This one move created a technological leap forward and empowered one man to possess the firepower of a dozen marksmen armed with muskets. During its time in service during the Civil War, one Confederate officer is credited with the phrase, "It's a rifle that you could load on Sunday and shoot all week long." Henry changed the landscape of shoulder-fired weapons forever. Lever-action weapons made their way from the rank to the ranchers. The lever-action rifle that Henry created is also credited with forging the frontier west. It gave those who headed westward the firepower to tackle game and any other threat. It empowered the well-armed defender, and it solidified the ability to expand. This was not simply another rifle, this was the start of the evolution of the weaponry that we see today. And I'm here to tell you today that the Henry Special Products Division are the creators of the lever-action rifles of tomorrow. When you think of a lever-action rifle, what comes to mind? Do you think of nostalgic Western movies, or does your mind gravitate to something entirely different? When I think of Henry, I remember being a child reading the Henry catalog, panning through the pages and just dreaming of the day that I would own a Henry Golden Boy. Today, I now find myself fascinated with this idea of making the old new, and the SPD is Henry's leap into the next chapter, in my opinion. From first glance, it is immediately apparent. No longer do you need to buy a factory lever-action rifle and then spend another $1,000 in parts to make it practical for modern applications. Henry's team has painstakingly designed this rifle to be a fighter right out of the box. So whether you are taking game or defending your homestead, the SPD line of rifles has the DNA of a modern fighting rifle with the nostalgia and practicality of a manually operated lever-action rifle. In typical Henry fashion, the end user is greeted with a confidence-inspiring action that is incredibly stout and predictable. There are a few things on earth that are as pleasing as the moment you work the action on a Henry. You fire the rifle, you feel the impulse, and your hand swiftly moves into action. You hear the bolt release like a clock, and the sounds of a fine-tuned machine greet your ear. The hammer is overcome easy, the bolt is fully rearward. Now you simply return the action to its home, and you are prepared once again to send another round downrange quickly. The build quality of a Henry is second to none, and the reliability is unmatched. Most creators, when they get a lever-action rifle, the cowboy hat, chaps, and cigar come out. And I get it, because lever-action rifles are extremely nostalgic from that era. But I think that portraying them only in that light is actually a disservice. When I think of a modern lever-action rifle, I see a robust rifle that is capable of so much more. And I like to dive deep into it, running drills and training with it just like I would any other modern fighting rifle. Are they ever going to be just as good as an AR-15? Well, in some ways, no, but in some ways, they actually possess benefits that make them remarkably capable and very advantageous. Regarding this SPD 357, I see several key benefits that make this rifle truly unique. Henry opted for the carbon fiber BSF barrel, which is advertised to save almost a pound over a similar Henry X model 357. When I'm running my BDE 9mm can, that effectively means that I have a lighter gun suppressed than other similar 357s without a suppressor. Further, Henry provided a nice long MLOK rail right out of the box. That means from white lights to bipods, forward grips to lasers, I can set this rifle up with modern accessories without having to go out and spend a ton of money for a rail. In the realm of pistol caliber carbines, a .357 Magnum is a very potent round. I think of this round very similarly to the 300 Blackout. I can run potent 125 grain .357 ammunition. I was getting just under 1,800 feet per second at the muzzle with 158 jacketed hollow points. Or I can opt to run 38 special ammo, which is almost always inherently subsonic. And because the action does not cycle automatically, I have this extremely reliable platform that is insanely quiet with subsonic ammunition. This rifle is equally capable at home next to my nightstand as it is out running around in the field. When running shooting drills, this rifle points fast and comes on target very similarly to other fighting rifles. The recoil is incredibly tame, which means that working the action and keeping the gun on target for fast follow-up shots is very, very easy. The only real drawback that I can see with this, that the Supreme model from Henry solves, is this has a lack of a removable magazine. But in terms of capability, having 9 rounds of full power .357 Magnum on deck, plus the ability to add other accessories on top of the gun fast, means that I have enough firepower for even modern threats and modern target engagements. Yes, it has some downsides, as every single platform that exists does, but what I see in this build is the capability to provide and protect in a widely accepted platform that's robust and extremely reliable. In the planning phase of this video, when we were working with Henry to figure out exactly what we were going to do with the SPD line of rifles, I had a choice between different cartridges, and I ended up landing on the .357 Magnum for several reasons. And before we get too far into this video, I wanted to do a little bit of a sound and recoil comparison of full power .357 loads against full power .38 special loads, and then also some subsonic .38 special loads. And there's a key trait of that particular cartridge, and it's the fact that when you're running .38 special, it's almost always inherently subsonic. So you get the benefits of a 300 Blackout in a platform that is a lever action rifle. So as we're going through this comparison, I'm showing you what this looks like from a recoil and a sound perspective. I'm gonna put some rounds into dirt downrange so you can just focus on the sound of the suppressed and unsuppressed fire, but I'll also be shooting some of our steel targets that we have laid out downrange. Whenever we're touching a rifle on this channel, most people are gonna at some point ask, how was the accuracy? Because accuracy matters. If you purchase a high-end rifle and it doesn't perform, there's nothing that is as dissatisfying as putting those rounds down range and realizing you have a gun that groups 6-inch groups at 100 yards. But before I get into the actual performance, and we're gonna show you footage of me grouping at various distances on paper, I wanna talk first about pistol caliber carbines and pistol cartridges in general in terms of accuracy. Now, they're still capable of high levels of accuracy, but when we're talking about shooting pistol cartridges out of a rifle, I never have the expectation of performance that I would have out of, say, a PRC cartridge or a 6-ARC or anything that is designed around ballistics and flight trajectories at extreme distances. When we're working with guns like this, I view them in a hunting role as like 100 to 150 yard gun maximum. That's just simply because of the energy that these possess, or in some of the cartridges, the lack of energy that they possess. But you should still be seeing a high level of accuracy out of a platform like this, but we just need to have realistic expectations, in my opinion, of what you are going to see downrange. And the cardboard targets that I always use anytime I'm zeroing our rifles would be our C-Zone cardboard target. You can find these on our website, but I use these diamonds to get precise zeros, especially at 25 yards and 50 yards. And for this particular rifle right now, I have it zeroed at 50. That may change as I dial in exactly what round I'm gonna be using for hunting, and I put a scope on this thing. But for the purposes of this video, I zeroed it at 50 yards. And then as I get out to 100 yards with my optic, because I'm sort of limited with the type of optic that I have here, I start to use the 6-inch circle. And that's going to show you the capabilities of this particular build. And I did see, what I saw was exceptional accuracy for a 357 Magnum rifle. At 25 yards, we're just stacking tight groups. At 50 yards, we're stacking tight groups. And out at 100, again, we see the groups open up a little bit, but we're still putting the rounds exactly where I need them to go in an acceptable manner that I would be comfortable taking this rifle with a scope hunting for white-tailed deer here in Pennsylvania. With this particular optic, the center reticle is a triangle. To me, it's not as precise when we're aiming, so that does present limitations if I'm trying to prove the accuracy of this gun. And further, to gain the most amount of accuracy out of any of my rifles, I will hand load the ammunition and I will fine tune it for this particular rifle. But immediately out of the box, what I saw was accuracy that I expected. I expected to see this thing act as a performer, especially with that carbon fiber barrel. I know that's a high quality barrel. And as you watch the footage, you guys are gonna see exactly that. This thing is more than capable of taking game or defending your life. I want to talk a little bit about the range experience with the Henry SPD 357 Magnum rifle. And when I'm explaining what I did on the range and how I learned this rifle, I'm going to touch a little bit on two other rifle platforms that share many similarities with this particular rifle that I think are going to give you guys some data on the actual application of this particular style of rifle and this exact model in a range training application. And the other two models of rifles that I'm going to be discussing are the Henry Supreme, the 300 Blackout that I have, and also a standard AR-15 platform. So as I'm referencing AR-15s, understand I'm not talking about a specific barrel length or cartridge, just that that is the most common rifle in this sort of an application. But what Henry's doing here with the SPD line of rifles is truly unique, and it's bridging the gap between a traditional AR-15, a traditional lever action rifle, and something that is sort of not any of those, which would be the Supreme model. And as we look at lever action rifles, there are many purists out there that want a rifle that's more like this, where it still has the DNA of a true historic and heritage-based lever action rifle. It has the side loading gate, still has the removable magazine tube to unload the rifle quickly. All the features that a purist would want with a stock that looks normal and still bridges the gap with an AR-15 in terms of capability because of some of the parts and the furniture that are on this particular rifle. So as I discuss the drills, understand that I'm comparing it to those two different models. So on the range, the first drills that I'll ever do with a rifle are simple ready up drills where I'm pushing on target, and I'm doing that to get used to the feel of a rifle like this. When I talked about the Henry Supreme model, that one especially threw my mind for a loop because of the removable magazine. And I was just assuming in my mind that it was going to cycle on its own because it felt very AR-15-ish. When you're running an AR-15, you just simply have ammunition inside of it. You don't have to worry about anything else. It just cycles automatically with every single trigger press. When we're running lever action rifles, obviously it's a manually operated rifle. So those first drills, I'm just going to re-familiarize myself with a new platform. I'm going to test where I have all of my parts, like my forward grip, positioned, so I make sure everything's dialed in exactly the way I want. And as I was running these drills, I found that this gun points really, really well. And I'm gonna attribute that to the carbon fiber barrel. So the weight bias on this rifle is nearly perfectly balanced because you don't have this heavy barrel hanging out in front of a synthetic stock. Henry's SPD team did a really good job of balancing this rifle. And you can really start to see that as you move out of the single round drills and you start to move into multi-round drills, transitions, and moving with this rifle. The lightweight and the fact that even with my BDE 9mm can on the end of it, it's lighter than comparable 357s that are unsuppressed, means that I have a rifle that can get on target arguably as quickly as any other AR-15, and it points very similarly. So it has this very typical normal feel, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but it just has this familiar feel, that's probably a better word, of a rifle that's meant to just get on target quick and send rounds down range. The thing I really appreciate about a Henry action as we move into drills that are multi-round engagements on targets is the action is very robust. It's not as light or smooth as the Supreme, but the Supreme's a totally different design. This one, you're still cocking a traditional hammer with that action as the bolt comes back. So the force that you're feeling as you push that lever forward is resetting that hammer into position so it's ready to fire on the next round. But what I find with a Henry action is it is extremely predictable, very smooth, and it just feels good. So when I'm doing 2-round strings of fire, 3-round strings, bill drills, or anything like that, this rifle just sends rounds on target so quickly and so predictably. And on top of that, really, I would consider this rifle a pistol caliber carbine because of the 357 Magnum cartridge that I'm shooting. But whether I'm shooting 357 full power loads or I'm shooting subsonic 38 special, this gun just stays on target. There's no incredibly hard recoil like you would see with my 4570. So even though I can take a 4570 X model like I have and run it on the range like this, I can shoot this rifle all day just like an AR-15 and not walk away fatigued at the end of the day. And that was just a key characteristic that I saw as I was shooting this rifle on the range, is that this is a gun that I can run any drill, any style of shooting, and I can enjoy it for the entire day. But not only can I plink with 38 special subsonic, I can switch like that to 357 Magnum full power loads, and I just have this potent rifle that is then able to not only defend my life at home, but also take game in the field should I choose to take this thing out hunting. So the best way that I would describe these range days with this particular rifle is I walk away with this confidence that I have a rifle that is going to have enough ammunition on tap. It is potent enough that even if I'm using it in defensive situations on my property, my home, or I'm out and about, or I'm going to states that really hate semi-automatic rifles, I have something that is still small, still extremely light, very fast to point. I can throw it on my back with a sling or on my chest with a sling, and it feels very much like a dialed in fighting rifle. And I attribute that just to the DNA of Henry itself, but also the accessories and the way that they approached this rifle in a way that to date, nobody else had. So the only downside of this rifle that I see from that range day as I'm shooting this is the ability to reload quickly. And that really is when we're comparing these 3 different types of rifles. The Henry Supreme is going to be faster because you can have a chest rig full of AR-15 mags. When it runs out, you stick another mag in, you're ready to go. So the only changes that I'm gonna be doing to this rifle after this range day are adding some capability to be able to have other ammunition on the rifle, so I could at least pull 1 or 2 rounds off, maybe on the rail or on the stock, and be able to load it and get it back going very, very quickly. But when we're looking at it from a traditional shooting standpoint of a defensive role, many of us are carrying sidearms that are subcompacts that hold 8 or 9, maybe 10 rounds. This still fills that role very well. And because of that, after this first range day, I walked away understanding just how capable this rifle is. The overall question of this video is, do I think a rifle like this has a place in a modern arsenal? Absolutely. Lever action rifles are reliable, fast, and they are extremely quiet suppressed. Are they always the best tool for the job? Maybe not, but I also don't think that they need to be viewed as the relics of old that so many other people portray them as. I think Henry took their legendary DNA, added extra functionality, and made a lighter, more capable lever action rifle than ever. You get the reliability of a manually operated firearm with some modern equipment like a carbon fiber barrel and the full MLOK rail from factory. Henry obviously saw the value in an out of the factory, fully built out rifle. For guys like me, that saves me time and money when I just want to grab a rifle, pull it out of the box, slap on an optic, and go to work. It's already set up. I can appreciate that so much. And further, it's a gorgeous rifle, except for that one mark that Brenton added to it when he dropped it gathering B-roll, but we're not gonna talk about that anymore. So what does this mean for Henry? Well, I'm not really sure, but I would guess that they're analyzing where they're headed from here. I think they're cresting into a new era where the idea of lever guns of old meets the needs of the future. And I'm not suggesting that they'll ever wander away from their DNA. Henry has a rich history of producing quality lever action rifles, and I'm certain that that will always remain. But when you drop something like this on me, I can only begin to ask, what the heck is next? So I'll ask it, what is next, Henry? What else do you guys have up your sleeve that you haven't talked about quite yet? But one thing that I'm sure of, whatever Henry does get themselves into, it's going to be made in the USA. It's going to be built with the same quality and craftsmanship we have come to love from any of the Henry repeating rifles.